Oh man, this game needs a one-handed mode. For accessibility, of course. You fucking pig. Let's be real here for a second. The whole outrage over this game is as ludicrous as the people pretending like they're playing this with a continuous hard-on. At best, this is only true for those who play the game on hard-on mode. The nude skin. Ha! Having an attractive protagonist in a game is nothing new, and it's also nothing worthy of criticism. And it's nothing to be ashamed of for enjoying. The game isn't even about how sexy the protagonist is. I mean, yeah, she kinda is hyper feminine. But during gameplay, you have better things to do than ogling her, and there are much nicer things to look at in this beautifully devastated world that doesn't look dead despite the desolation. There's also much worse to look at with the horrifying enemies. It starts off rather straightforward with spider-like insects and some mantis people, but soon the game ramps up the disgusting designs with monsters looking like bloated, tumor-ridden organs attached to a flesh golem. Well, we can't let them deface the scenic view, so we have to brutally murder them all. The presentation reminds me a lot of Nier Automata, an attractive fembot accompanied by some flying scouting drone traversing the ruins of long-gone human civilizations, with flashy combat and a noteworthy soundtrack. So noteworthy, in fact, that the game even includes a feature to change the background music at checkpoints. But not as outstandingly amazing as Nier's soundtrack itself. Though, I felt it got better the more I played. It felt rather safe to me during the first level, like the game didn't want it to stand out too much. And it got a bit samey after a while, since the level is quite long and you listen to the same song for much of it. But after that, the music gets a lot more captivating as well as dynamic.
작업이 되겠지. 하지만 콜로니와 연락할 방법은 임무 완수밖에 없어요. 그날이 어서 왔으면 좋겠네요.
Some of the music even sounds a bit like Björk. Well, I'm up for it. And Stellar Blade is a spectacle fighter. Think of Platinum's games like Bayonetta or Metal Gear Rising, or well, Nier Automata. And now turn down the spectacle a tiny notch and add a pinch of Souls-like design. Maybe it's time to give this new take on the Souls-like genre or action games inspired by Souls-like mechanics a new name. I propose Flashy Souls. The gameplay is very much combo focused with many unlockable abilities to flesh out the fighting even more, like follow-up attacks after perfect dodges and counters, teleport assaults when the enemy charges up a devastating blow, aerial combos, and a selection of special attacks you can fire off after generating enough beta energy through dealing or receiving damage or perfectly parrying attacks. But then you need to stay on the lookout for enemies' counterattacks, and they don't always flinch when getting hit by your blade and just keep attacking. And they do hit hard, so you need to use your sluggish parry and clumsy dodge to avoid getting hit. Yeah, Eve needs a moment to raise her sword or get ready to sidestep, so you have to anticipate the attack just ever so slightly. Your best chance is to learn the timing for perfect dodges and parries, because they open up opportunities for follow-up attacks or throw the enemies off balance, which opens them up for a devastating finishing blow. So in that regard, the game follows in the footsteps of the more recent Souls games, like The Lords of the Fallen, Lies of P or Steel Rising, or all the Team Ninja Souls-likes. And this also means that parrying an enemy's attack, even perfectly parrying it, doesn't stop the onslaught. You need to parry each and every attack to survive unharmed, because enemies won't get thrown into a stagger animation after a successful parry, like you might be used to from the Souls series. You have to keep chipping away at their balance gauge to get them to become groggy, and then the button prompt for a finisher appears. The system certainly works. I mean, it has been proven to work for a few games now. I just hope it doesn't become the norm or gets copy-pasted to death like the original system has been before. But yeah, it works fine in this game. The finishers are mostly utilized during boss fights or harder enemies, since they last longer and force you to stop attacking every once in a while. But for regular enemies, you're quite well equipped with a lot of different options to deal with them before you even manage to lower their balance gauge to 0. Even when I tried to go for a finisher, I always killed them before I depleted their balance gauge. But still, you need to carefully observe all your enemies as to not take some otherwise avoidable hits. Enemies, for the most part, telegraph their attacks rather obviously, and their attack patterns are easy to memorize. And when you do get hit, you can always heal yourself, with a capped out healing resource that gets recharged at checkpoints, which also reanimates most enemies. So yeah, standard fare. But where I criticized other games for blatantly taking mechanics from Demon Souls and forcing them into a new game, I think it benefits Stellar Blade. There is no explanation for the enemy respawn. I mean, Eve just sits her gorgeous ass down on the chair and rests for a few seconds. Methinks developers have forgotten how much effort From Software put into their world building. A world in an everlasting cycle of death and corrupted resurrection is the perfect setting for this kind of enemy respawn mechanic. A post-apocalyptic city filled with mutants is not, really. But from a simple gameplay perspective, it's for the better. Checkpoints and fast travel points are plentiful, and unlockable shortcuts are also all over the place, so you're never far away from a full health restore and resource refresh. And you don't seem to lose anything on death, and fights aren't too tough compared to other games in that genre. You are just too well equipped with ballistics for enemies to become an actual threat. At least so far. Maybe the difficulty ramps up drastically at the end of the game. But for those who still think the combat is a bit too punishing, there's also story mode. So yeah, shortly after Rise of the Ronin, another Souls-inspired game with an easy mode that's already not that tough. And now we could open the debate over easy modes in Dark Souls once more. Which I will, just a bit. Maybe because the level design and enemy placement and the way your abilities and moves behave need to be balanced around multiple difficulty settings, an easy mode does impact the other difficulty modes. Maybe these two recent examples prove just that the easy mode lowered the difficulty of the whole game. Because tweaking every mechanic and creating all the encounters anew for each difficulty selection is way too much work for any developer to do, especially for bigger studios that need to please their shareholder overlords. Implementing different difficulty modes isn't as easy as many would think, at least not if you do it properly. You can't just change a few numbers around and expect it all to still work, or for players to still get the intended experience. Some mechanics might outright break. Every little change creates ripples that affect everything else. And then there are things you can't compensate with bigger or smaller numbers. One could make a whole video out of this topic. And I kinda plan to do so. But here, I just wanted to voice this random thought of mine concerning the overall difficulty of this game. Not saying this is actually what happened, it's just something that came into my mind. The overall lower difficulty doesn't save the game from bullshit moments though. God, I hate it when enemies are just waiting for me around a corner and immediately rush and attack. Are they standing around all day, just waiting for the only traveler to walk past them? I mean, this isn't a castle and they are not guards on duty. These moments always feel so incredibly gamey. And they would piss me off so much more in a more punishing game. Like in the Lords of the Fallen reboot, where it was just unfair. Here, the lower difficulty of this game excuses the bullshit moments. You might not even lose too much health, and even if you die, your last checkpoint is most likely not too far away. Now, fighting enemies awards you some form of XP, or rather skill progression, which nets you skill points to learn and enhance abilities. Your stats though, like attack power, health or defense, only increase through collectibles and gear. You can equip different exospines that come with bonuses to certain stats or raise the effectiveness of certain maneuvers. These exospines, when fully upgraded, offer multiple significant bonuses for always one particular playstyle. Then there's the gear modules. Those only offer a single bonus, but that one can be upgraded to be more effective, and it's easier to mix and match different bonuses, that is, if you've unlocked more gear slots. And you unlock those through the upgrade system. I mean, of course the game has an upgrade system. All the upgrades are linear. Weapon cores raise your sword's damage, tumbler modules allow you to increase the number of healing thingies you can carry, omnibolts unlock additional module slots, and the game awards you these for defeating bosses or finding hidden stashes. So similarly to another FromSoft Souls-like, Sekiro, the game has a lot control over when you grow more powerful, and with that can craft much tighter challenges. In theory at least. To increase your health or your beta reserves, you need to collect little trinkets, and kinda like in Zelda, whenever you've found 3 of them, the corresponding stat increases by a set amount. There's also a lot of minor upgrade materials to enhance your equipment pieces or craft new suits, and you get those from, well, exploring. While the game doesn't feature an open world, and while the levels are rather straightforward, and more like wide, open-air hallways, you can lose yourself a bit in these environments. Progression leads you through isolated areas that flow seamlessly together through bottlenecks, often locked by a gate you need to find a fusion cell to operate somewhere within the area, or by finding a password on a dead soldier not too far away, or by solving a little environmental puzzle. It never gets too crazy, but the game does lean heavy into the exploration aspect. There are little pickups strewn about everywhere. Small, sometimes slightly hidden side areas always rewarding you with upgrade material or major collectibles. One collectible even has Eve prominently presenting her cans. Or you find little tidbits of lore. And there's so much lore to be found. From newspaper articles to old records to the last thoughts of the deceased, recorded for future generations that will hopefully prevail. And of course the item descriptions. Weird how that caught on. And you can read about all the monsters and characters you meet. The world is so packed with detail. with all the posters and signs on buildings, with how the different robot people look, how the cities are designed. There's little field stoves at the camps and dream catchers dangling over the sleeping spots. And all the locations are packed full with all kinds of things to make it more lifelike. Nothing feels empty, aside from the sterile server rooms. But the cities really feel like they were once bustling hubs of civilization. The survivor hideout is decorated with all kinds of trinkets and cultural religious ornaments. It's definitely style over substance, though the game isn't devoid of substance. The team crafted a complex universe that doesn't always make the most sense or is always logically sound, but it is intriguing. I enjoy exploring the world and learn more about the world through little hints in the environment or from short messages left by the soldiers you find throughout your journey. But to be completely honest, the part where the story was front and center, where I only talked to people and read about events, was the most boring to me. I enjoy this game for the atmosphere, the exploration and the exhilarating gameplay. That started off a bit awkward, but I grew accustomed to it pretty quickly, and since then, it has been a constant thrill ride. The game's really great, and even if you just casually like spectacle fighters, you should give it a try. The gorgeously designed game world is an added bonus, and the weird, Nier-like presentation is just the cherry on top. But there is another issue with this game, and it's kind of a big one. I'm talking about censorship. From what it looks like, the game immediately received a patch that turned down the amount of blood and also a feature where the blood sticks to your character model. And also covers up Eve on some of the outfits. And this is unacceptable. They marketed the game on their visuals and then they patch them out or make them worse. It sounds to me a bit like false advertisement, and I hope the dev team or Sony or whoever is in charge here rows back on that issue. And if this is a deal breaker for you, I completely understand. It's a shame, but stuff like this shouldn't even happen in the first place. And it sucks that this happens to a game that's otherwise pretty darn great. So yeah, keep that in mind. And with that, I'm off. I'm wishing you the greatest of days. This has been Rady, and I hope to see you again on the next game. Oh, and please don't be a weeb and get the Japanese version for the Japanese voice acting. This is a Korean game.
알고 있어. 고마워.